What happens when two titans in PropTech join forces? In this episode of the Real SaaS podcast, Jesse Burrell sits down with Brian Tepfer, CEO of PropStream, to reveal the inside story behind PropStream's acquisition of BatchLeads and BatchDialer. From deal negotiations to the creation of a game-changing super app, this episode is packed with insights on growth, innovation, and the future of real estate tech.
What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Real SaaS podcast. Today, we're going to do it a little bit differently. I have some huge announcements professionally, and I have a very special guest. Today, my guest is Brian Tepfer. What is going on, buddy?
What isn't going on, Jesse? That's a great question.
This is the perfect time to do this podcast. I actually, as of yesterday, I carved out of my business BatchLeads and BatchDialer, and PropStream is acquiring, and Brian is the CEO of that company. So we're going to kind of talk about how this deal came about. I want to learn more about how Brian became the CEO of PropStream. And a lot of people are just interested in, when a company sells, what does that look like? And then from your perspective of being the acquirer, what does that look like as well? So before we kind of dive in and dig into this special episode, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you became the CEO of PropStream.
How long do you have? That's a question. So a little bit about myself. I have been in the technology space for 27 years. Actually, I started in 1998 during the dot-com days.
Okay.
And that was quite an adventure because we all know what happened with the dot-com bubble. And when I started in technology, we were still using dial-up modems.
Yeah. And
that was really what we were supporting, shifting into broadband and web hosting. So early days of the internet. And it was a great start to a career because you got to see the transition of technology from, and I'm going to date myself, to pre-Pentium days.
Yeah.
And now people don't even talk about CPU speeds and things like that because It's just so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Through the market. But going through that transition, going through the dot-com era of uncertainty and worry, and just the massive shifts in technology, I ended up in the PropTech space. Mm-hmm. And 23 years ago, I ended up at a large MLS and association management company that was a nationwide MLS provider.
Okay.
And that was really, I can think, the foundation of what I do today, because it blended two things together really well. It blended business and business needs and that marketability and like real product, which the dot-com days didn't have, with technology and moving something forward. And so that was really exciting and innovative, where the ground level of online MLS systems, data pre-Zillow days,
right,
is really where I kind of cut my teeth through that area. And now when you look at data ubiquity, how seamless everything is, when you go to search a house 20 years ago, you went to your realtor.
Right.
Today, the first thing you do is you go to Zillow or Redfin or any of these other public portals. The ability for products like ours to have these nationwide databases just was not a thing 20 years ago. So I love that I've been able to walk through the evolution of software, and I started making a shift from being more of a technologist to being more of that business-centered, product and customer-oriented individual, I'd say about 15 years ago.
Gotcha.
And what I found was I really gravitated more towards how do we meet customer needs? How do we solve for problems that customers were facing? And I think the biggest shift that I found kind of helped shape what I do today was the online public portals. When Zillow came out, or Trulia, it was such a culture shock to realtors because they went from being like the gatekeeper of all the information. You wanted a home, you came, gave me your requirements, I showed you the listings, to home buyers searching for what they wanted and going. And so what they had to learn was to be a service-oriented model where they are servicing their clients in a different way.
Yes.
And then meeting the needs to give them the tools to make that transition.
Right.
So, I mean, I could go on. I won't bore everybody. And then moving from that for 20 years, the opportunity came up to lead and be the CEO of PropStream.
Yep.
And I thought, this is fantastic because I was able to take the next step in my career and my growth, but stay in the space of real estate technology. And I really servicing an industry that I love.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. Let's dive into, Batch being acquired by PropStream. I'm sure that's what a lot of you want to hear about and know about. And to be honest with you guys, it really happened organically to where, I called Brian. So I have 3 divisions of batch service, which is now just batch data, but we have BatchLeads, BatchDialer, and batch data. And I actually called you as a competitor to BatchLeads, interested in, growing our data side of the business, and reaching out to you and saying, hey, people are going to like what they're going to like. Right. We both have great platforms, but you're going to buy skip tracing and or contact information and data somewhere. Why couldn't it be us? Yeah. And I jokingly said, this is so important to us. I'd sell you BatchDialer and BatchLeads. And you looked at me and go, would you?
Yep.
And I was like, huh. I mean, sure. I mean, everything's for sale. Kind of jokingly, and we were both kind of kidding, both kind of serious. And, from there, I think we both really sat down and thought, like, this could be something special. This could make sense. This could be a disruptor to serving the, wholesalers and real estate investors even further than what we've already done. But us together, we've been calling it the super app, since we kind of started this conversation. And it gives me the opportunity to help you grow that, but at the same time, grow the batch data side of the business, and be a huge support figure to you guys on that side as well. And, batch data it's a B2B side, and it's been something new and fun for us that has been growing pretty rapidly. And I talked to my partners, and for us, it just made all the sense in the world. And I would love to hear, kind of from your perspective and the Stewart perspective, who's your parent company that technically bought BatchLeads and BatchDialer, but it's rolling into PropStream. Yeah. I'd love to hear, or I'm sure the audience would love to hear a little bit of your perspective on that side.
Good. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I'm excited to be probably one of Batch Data's biggest customers. Yep. For now, we'll be sure to be. I loved the story of how this came together. Mm-hmm. And you're right, it was just this very organic conversation. And I really started taking it seriously when I thought our biggest challenge today is that perception of skip tracing. That Batch is known for the quality, the reliability of your skip tracing product.
Right.
And you have all these new great AI tools. And so as I was thinking about it, I'm like, how could we spin this? And I think the initial conversation was, I'll buy skip tracing data from you, but we need to, we're not going to say where we're getting it. So
then
there
we
was
can't
an overlap.
say where we service it either. And, there'd be a bunch of NDAs in place for stuff like that. And that's kind of where it started. And then, when I jokingly said that, you're just like, huh. Or did you have like I could ask this question now, going into that meeting, like, did you already have a thought of potentially doing that? Because you said something about you guys were maybe talking about some inorganic growth.
We were. And I think the big shift in my mind was when we actually started saying we're not going to discuss or disclose where we're getting our skip tracing data from, because we didn't want to create this weird, not competition, but,
competitive advantage for either side, because both sides could spin it in a way where it'd be a competitive
right. It could be positive or negative.
Right.
And then as I really started to think on it, I was like, wait a minute, that is the value. It's the name. It's that batch skip tracing, batch data, batch leads holds a certain value with people.
Right.
And why would I want to hide that? Because that to me was the biggest, that's something we should be celebrating. Yes. Like, hey, look what we did in PropStream. Yeah. We have all this data, and now we have this contact. And that, in my mind, is the evolution of thought of, why don't we actually just take this conversation that we joked about more seriously and kind of float the idea to Stewart and say, how can we make this happen?
So was Stewart talking, or, Brad over at Stewart, was he kind of talking to you? Because you guys have big plans to grow. And,
we do.
And Fred, the CEO of Stewart, has huge plans for you guys as well. And was one of the conclusions saying, some inorganic growth could be a great strategic way to get to this number.
Yeah, and that was actually something before we even started talking, is how do we grow to our goals? And yes, you could take, there's, the road of customer growth, which is great, and keep servicing and making better and better product. But the inorganic growth that you're talking about is, how do we leapfrog to get closer to our goals? And that was really, in my mind, that was one piece of it, but it was also the natural, I think, synergies of filling product gaps on both sides.
Oh, 100%.
You
the
had
more we dug in,
the
crazier it's like, your guys' strengths were some of our weakness, some of our strengths were some of your weakness. And the more I've dug into it and seen both platforms further, I'm like, oh wow, this is gonna be
makes
special.
so much sense.
Oh yeah.
And you had something that PropStream was looking at but never developed, which is the dialer.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, do we want to build or buy?
Yeah.
And it just made so much more sense to buy, and again, take an established, reputable, company that is one of the top in the industry.
Yeah.
So it made perfect sense. And then as I think we got to know each other on a more personal level, it just, over the course of 6 months, 8 months now, we're like, we're going to make this happen. Yeah, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah, and me and you, started crafting, a pitch to Stuart and why this were to make sense. So it was just such a unique situation for me to go through, and I feel like you too, because the first pitch was yours, just to get them interested.
Yeah.
And then, once we got Brad to the table, then it was on me. You're like, bro, I want to do this, but it's out of my hands. Like, now it's your turn to go shine. And my partners, were excited. You were excited. Like, on the personal level, I'm like, man, I really hope I don't let everyone down, because it was on me. They wouldn't even let Amy or Evo in. Like, I know Brad's strategy was like, I want one person. I don't want agendas to where he can't prep or finesse his answers or anything like that. And you advised me to be completely honest, transparent.
Be yourself.
And show what type of person you are. And, ultimately that ended up, working to get what I really wanted and also what you really wanted. And the most exciting thing about this for me is I think it's a winning situation for both sides. And I don't actually think that always happens. Like, I really got what I wanted. Like, this made way more sense for us as an organization, where I wanted my future to go and how much time I wanted to spend in the business. Right. And for PropStream, it's just game over for everyone else. Like, good luck. Like, just good luck.
When you combine what we're going to be doing and like what we have now affectionately called the super app, which is combining the best of both worlds. It's gonna be really hard to beat that.
We're the two biggest, most reputable names, and you guys were far bigger than us. But we had, as you've dug in, you're like, wow, they made some really cool shit. Like, and that was always my frustration. I was like, we've done so many cool things, and it's still not even chipping away at your guys' market share. And I'm as competitive as you are, and I'm like, okay, like, can't beat them, join them, and let's go do this, and let's go win in a really big way. And I'm excited to be a part and, help you as much or as little as you want on that side. And that I'm a phone call away. And obviously for the next 6 months to a year, I'm there.
You'll be here
right by your side. But like, even long term, with, I think what has been most important to me coming out of this is just like the friendship that we've built, and it's going to last a long time.
It better. Otherwise I know where you live now.
Oh, you do?
That to me, I think, was the biggest, I don't even say the word selling point, but our natural excitement. I think it really kind of shone through, and how much it's made sense, because we both know our industries really well, and we knew the impact that this would make. And as you talk about competition and what we're going to be able to deliver, bring to our customers, bring to the table, continue to innovate, and just really take our industry by storm and be the biggest and the best data provider that PropTech has seen.
For sure. Yeah, let's kind of dive into the podcast format a little bit. When it comes to profitability or growth, what's important to PropStream is there a balance to it for you guys? I have an opinion on kind of like what we did, because I was also bootstrapped, but you guys operate completely independently, I believe. And so you obviously have people having opinions on that, but I guess, what are the opinions on, is it just grow, or is profits more important? Where do you guys kind of lie there?
I think growth is always number one.
Okay.
Profitability is great, and I think that's a byproduct of growth. So when you look at profitability, and the way that I view it as a CEO of a company, is profitability comes from growth. And if you place that first, that's where the product suffers, because you're going to be making compromises where you don't want to.
Right.
But the way that you have growth is by making a better product, having better service, and offering more to your users.
Yeah.
Because that should be the focus. Profitability comes from it, that's the byproduct. And I have found that if that is your sole focus, then product suffers, your customers suffer, because you're honed in on the wrong thing.
Right.
So yeah, I would say definitely growth strategy is our number one goal, and ensuring that we are providing the best experience for people. Because naturally, word of mouth, look at online. I mean, it's so easy to disseminate information.
Yeah.
When people are happy, they tell you, but when they're not happy, it's a
tell
lot
everyone.
louder. They tell everybody. So it's those are the things you always really need to be mindful of, and creating a product that is a customer focused and customer first, area. That's always number one.
Yeah, and with us, at Batch having multiple product lines and having the because we were a tech. BatchLeads is really known for a texting platform as we came out, and then we added in the data and kind of became more of a competitor to you guys. I'd say in the last 3 years, I think a year or so before you got there, be my assumption, or maybe a little bit longer than that. But man, it was really hard for us to. It took a lot of marketing dollars of awareness for us to even be talked in the same light
Right.
as PropStream, to be honest with you. But the shift of the texting changing and the skip tracing get more and more commoditized to where even ours was better, but the value of how much cheaper it got really affected our bottom line to where, me, Andy, and Evo had to make a decision of are we going to let the product suffer with, pulling back to be profitable, or are we going to let the profitability suffer? And we chose the profitability suffering. We went over a year without taking a draw to make sure that none of that suffered, that we could keep the people we needed to keep, to make sure that we did have to do some laying off because that was a significant amount of revenue that dropped
happened.
off for us.
Right.
I'm talking in 8 figures type of thing.
It's a lot.
But letting that happen slowly, and we also were doing it layoffs, waiting as long as we could, hoping that revenue would tick back up, but then interest rates hit and transaction volume just going down. It was
20%.
It was a perfect storm in the wrong way for us.
Right.
And it was brutal. And we're we just won't take home money. And that was it was hard to come to work every single day, not taking a pay. It was over a year. And it was a sacrifice that we had to make to keep the products in a good place, hoping that there'd be a great end scenario, which we got yesterday. And that was just something that we had to do. And I don't even think you knew that. But
No, but it just leads me, everything you said really exemplifies one of my philosophies, which is sometimes you have to take small losses to get big wins.
yeah. And I refuse to let the product suffer when everyone else is pouring into the technology. And I'm if there's a period of time where the three of us aren't, and we were still profitable, but how expensive it is to run a company and reserves that we have to have. So it's not we're losing money every month, but the margins were pretty thin to where we had to keep the money in the company to where it's and Andy's just until it's stable, which happened, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months ago, to where we were in a good place to where we could. Yeah. And I think Annie had such a PTSD that we were taking such a minimal amount of what I was used to taking. I'm she's just no, I need to see it keep growing. And I was okay, and then, and those conversations with you started happening too. And I was just whatever, it's fine.
Right. It's going to work out.
So, and it did. And now I couldn't be more excited, to be honest with you.
Same here. That's what again, it's the whole story. When you look at it in the big picture, it just continues to make more and more sense. And even now that we've done the acquisition, I think the more that we dig in and dive into the teams, what you offer, the data side and the data we're going to license from you guys,
right?
It really puts a really fine point onto why we did this deal and why this just made the most sense.
Yeah, and I think me and you've been so aligned that I'm going to do everything I can to give you the resources that I've built, over the last 12 years, also being a real estate investor and the relationships I have on that side. And even got to meet Anthony just a couple minutes ago. And I'm trying to get you even further into my world than you already are.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed meeting all the big, like your partners and affiliates that over the past 24 hours.
We have a lot more of that to do, and but at the same time, where I'm trying to grow, and you know what I'm trying to accomplish with Batch Data, and you signed a nice contract with us, and are going to make sure that you could showcase the side of our business as well to some degree, because you have relationships that I don't have either in the data world, because you've been in there so much longer than I am, and with the big companies, and what I have to do to get in to actually have a conversation with someone that's willing to change vendors, and that process is slow unless you know someone.
It is slow. One of the things I think, especially in the realtor space or the prop tech space, contracts last 3 to 5 years, at least. Minimum, especially with data contracts. Yeah. And it's not only the duration of contracts, it's the lift to shift. So I'd say that's
we've
really
offered people to switch, be like, your first year's free.
Yeah.
And then 3 years after that, because they're just like, I'm not going, all the technical debt that you have to create to unravel something and then rebuild it. It has to be more than just price.
Right. It's long-term strategy. And what they have to see is, how is this going to benefit the company and their growth in the long term? Because I said, it's shifting data providers, pulling out everything that's built in there, your APIs, your data connections, your mapping, all has to be redone.
Yes.
But I think that where you win is when you prove that the data is better, that your service is better, that the long-term strategy is a better product for the people using the data. Then that's when you really get them on board.
And that's where we've been really leaning into some of the proprietary machine learning and LLM modeling stuff that we've done. Is like, hey, we have this, we have this too, to where bundling this together, and then the biggest differentiator that we have had is being able to have one place for the contact enrichment and the data. And most people are just like, well, just give us the contact enrichment. You know what I mean? I don't want to unravel this. So that's where we've had to start leaning into even more proprietary stuff, even more data sets that some of the big competition that we have, getting a little bit more creative, because these legacy brands they just have it, and they have their claws in them, and you have to be very creative to get some of these large accounts, and it's tough, but it's been fun, and we're trying to poach some of those people away, but at the same time, identifying some of the new prop tech companies that are up and coming and making sure we're getting into them first, to where then they can't get into them. So it's being early as well on some people.
I would say one of the best conferences that I'm going to introduce you guys to, that we definitely need to get Batch Data on, is the Rezo conference.
Okay.
So are you familiar with Rezo?
Mm-mm.
It's the real estate standards organization.
Okay.
And a lot of those startups and those prop tech startups will go there, because that is where the standards on how real estate moves, it happens there. And so being now that we are officially partners, I'd actually be really excited to bring you there, introduce you to everybody. And I think that would be a really great kickoff for what Batch Data does and what could bring to the prop tech space.
And then, when did you become CEO officially of PropStream? 2 years ago?
2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago. So my question typically is, how has the business changed in the last 3 years? So since you started 2.5 years ago and became that leader of PropStream, what's really changed for you guys in your business and to grow, and minus, I guess, acquiring us. Before that, what was kind of your big focus?
The big focus for me was building a better product. We've had a great product, but you can't let your product go stale. And
let me interject really quick.
Oh, yeah, please.
One of the things that I'd heard in the industry was, PropStream hasn't really done many updates, and those have really started rolling out recently. So it must have taken some time to really unravel and put the roadmap together, because when Stuart bought them, everyone just kind of felt like it had been stagnant. So I want you to talk to the audience today of besides acquiring Batch, that's obviously signaling something very huge, but I've seen what you guys have done. I want you to talk about how it looks incredible now. It really does.
Yeah. So actually, I'm really excited. Aside from what it looks like today, in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to be coming out with another major release, and it's going to revolutionize the search experience.
Nice.
To the map pins will be
Oh,
dynamic.
you've been showing me, yeah.
AVMs and list price. We're making it more dynamic and mobile. And it's one of those, there was a lot of work being done on the back end to go to like a next gen version. But being in the space for so long, I know one of the biggest mistakes that you could make is changing the UI or making sudden changes overnight. When you move people's cheese, they don't know where things are. And so what we really try to do is not only unravel the tech stack a little bit to make it more stable, to make it a better scalable product, but was to slowly introduce new UI concepts and new changes. So that way the upgrades that we're going to be doing feel more organic and not just the sudden shock and awe of I log in, I don't know what I'm doing. Because that's the worst thing I think you could do to your users is just do the sudden change overnight. And so our upgrades have been intentional, introducing new concepts, introducing new UIs, introducing new layers. But what we're going to come out with over the next month, I think that's going to be the real signal to where we're going.
And that's just the start.
That's just the start.
Because of all the technologies that we have that you're going to integrate as well, and all the other stuff you had on the product roadmap. And then also some of the crazy ideas that me and Evo had, that we want to build out and have been working on. And oh my gosh, it's
combining the roadmaps is going to be fun.
I'm so excited, and I'm like, for how non-technical I am, like product roadmaps is my jam. That's always been something like just vision casting of like what's next. Because I talk to, as you've starting to learn, like so many people in the business, and I'm still so connected and kind of finding out where their pain points are, where technology hasn't been innovated. And I'm not going to say it on the show because I want, I don't want certain competitors to know kind of what we're going to be doing.
Give away the future.
In the background, not saying they know how to do it to the degree that we do, because we know they don't. You know who we're talking to.
We don't name names.
We sure don't. We don't even need to. But let's move on to, what's the toughest decision you've had to make, let's just say in PropStream, so far since you became CEO, and how did you navigate it?
I think the biggest, and it comes back to what I was just talking about with iterative changes. I think the biggest decision we had to make was there was a initiative to do a really big rewrite.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, there wasn't a lot of user feedback, customer feedback, and it was such a shift. Like, we need to pause what we're doing here because it isn't the way to the future.
Okay.
And then carving out what's been done and then slowly introducing that. So I think the biggest change was taking kind of the roadmap and development of a product and then saying that this is not the right direction, this is not how we win, and it's going to cause too much pain for our users. And then saying, how do we make this better? How do we iteratively introduce changes? That, I think, was one of the biggest decisions that we've had to make. And then coming out with, even changing the model, we just released pricing plans and making sure that we are staying competitive on many fronts. That's always a challenge because you want to look at what people are doing. You want to be innovative yourself, and you always want to leapfrog the competition. But you also need to, look around you, make sure that there isn't something that you're missing.
Right. So, for example, that would be, having the skip tracing bundled in with the subscription costs. And, we were probably the second ones to do it because we saw, the shift that it made. And for us, it was tough because we're giving something so valuable away that we had a lot of in-app revenue for. But we had to be kind of forward-thinking back to, we kind of had to take a short-term loss for a long-term growth. And, that was one of the things that, we had to do at BatchLeads, and it was tough. And that was like another thing we had to do. And I'm just like, man, everywhere I'm feeling it.
The pinch.
The pinch, yeah. But owning a company is not supposed to be easy, especially a bootstrap one, especially to the size that we've grown it. So those are problems that I had to remind myself that you're lucky to have, even though I didn't want to have them. But
no, they're good problems.
It was just something that, that we had to do, and we had to be forward thinking on some of these things. And, it led us to putting ourselves in a good light for when you came to look at us and you're like, all right, I love a lot of things that you guys are doing. And then obviously like the synergies and the roll up and all that just makes sense for you guys long term.
That's a really fine point too, is when we talk about being product innovative versus being a little bit of service, matching services. Because when you look at somebody that's offering free skip tracing or changing the price point, it's how do you maintain that competitive advantage by either matching the price point or just providing a much better product?
Right.
And what's the balance in between?
Yep.
And so we recognize that, okay, most of the people are doing the free skip tracing. We need to match what's being offered. So that way we don't get behind the 8 ball in terms of our service offering.
Right.
And then we say, okay, how do we do that? And then focus on the product and make the product even better. So I think it's always that you're always having to evaluate what you're doing, what services you're offering to your customers, how you're approaching business. And you should never rest on your laurels. You should always be saying to yourself, is this the right move today? What's the right move tomorrow?
Yeah, and in a certain way, like on the batch lead side, that is, or PropStream, or any type of company coming into that space with a similar offering, that is a must-have now. So for us, we're like, dang. But on the batch data side, I'm like, well, that is a must-have. Everyone needs our contact enrichment. Like, that's kind of how that conversation started with you guys. But that's a must-have. That's something that someone has to buy from us on the data side,
right?
To just be at par. And I'm like, oh, well, there's also some goodness as well, in the company. Holistically, and that's kind of a place that we've leaned into, and we're we're also finding more ways to find moats and just continue to uplift that contact enrichment, and I'm not going to say exactly what some of those things are, but getting creative and partnering with people to find other creative ways to just enhance that right party contact information is a big lift.
That's why I have so much confidence in getting skip tracing from batch data, because I let you guys focus on what you do best, which is that contact enrichment, that data, the where you're sourcing it from. I'm so glad to know that that's in great hands.
Yes, that's, that was the first product that ever came out was, batch skip tracing. And that was, the contact enrichment was always, that was the first thing that we worked on. And you don't know this, but at the beginning we had, a lot of influencers, and everyone was basically buying it from this, selling it for that. It was literally wholesaling phone numbers at the very beginning. Is sign a big contract with blank provider for 8 cents or 10 cents, and you're selling it for 18 to 20 cents. And it's like, oh, I'm just printing money. This is cool. But, as everyone saw that, it was
a shift.
It just kind of got competitive.
Yeah.
And some of those people in that space were big influencers. And I looked at Evo and I'm like, okay, we don't have big audiences. Mm-hmm. How do we be better? That was my first question. I'm like, we have to have a differentiator. We have to have a story we could tell that's different, because we have to spend money to get the attention.
Right.
They just have to use their socials. That's really how we started to really start innovating and show how we're different. And it came from neither of us wanted to be the guru or the influencer, or because we were real estate investors too, and a lot of these guys were big real estate guys that started selling, the skip tracing, and lucky by us, we were innovative on that side, and then at the same time, that's when I just went to other influencers that didn't want to do that, the Brent Daniels, the Ryan Pinedas, the Steve Trangs, the Pace Morbys, the Jamil Damjis, like, hey, I'll give you a cut if you just promote it, because like that's when affiliate marketing wasn't really a thing. This was 2018.
Yeah, it was a new concept.
And my thought process and how I've always been is, well, let's just share some of it with them. And if they use it and they like it and they want to promote it, let's give them a cut.
It's the win together scenario.
It's the win together. And then most of those companies are out of business now. So I'm not as dumb as I look. Next question.
I'm not going to touch that one.
Yeah, I know, right? Let's go the next 2, 3, 4 years. What's PropStream look like? What's the innovation path? What's going to really move the needle? Like, let's just not talk PropStream, like this prop tech space.
Oh, yeah.
Where do you see just big innovation shifts where if you don't do some of these things, you're dead?
Not to give away the farm, because
Correct.
I think
let's do a high level. Yeah.
We are in such a unique time in technology, and I've seen these shifts before 20 years ago, where every decade or two, you get these massive swings in tech and expectation.
Yep.
That happened with Google.
Zillow.
That happened with Zillow. And I think we're going to start to see that with AI. And I know AI has become such a ubiquitous buzz term.
But it's true.
Here's what again, I'll give away the farm a little bit, but we're looking at user behaviors, looking at pattern, and say, the AI is going to detect, I know you normally look in these 5 markets, and these are the search filters you do. And the first thing you do when you log in, it's going to give you your updates. It's going to give you those prompts. I'm just going to be able to say, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
and immediately it's going to give me my list and what I need based off of that criteria.
Yeah, and then it could even go to like, and create a direct mail campaign for these type of houses and what's the best messaging for it.
Yeah.
Boom.
So it's all going to be prompted. And I think that's the thing that I know as PropStream are looking into, and how do we make that shift to not only meet the user experience today, but try to predict what it's going to be in the next 3-4 years.
Well, good luck to the people trying to keep up, because they got a very big engineering team now.
Yeah.
So good luck. So I guess my how I like to wrap this show up is, last thoughts for someone that is getting into, or just owns a prop tech company or some type of SaaS product.
Yeah.
What's your advice? It doesn't have to be a new person. It doesn't have to be a seasoned person. Like what's the best advice? You're in a group of SaaS founders and you have your best gem to give. Like what would you give to other founders or other CEOs or executives?
Perseverance. I would say that one of the biggest things that people struggle with is fear of failure. Mm-hmm. Where I always like to say a Hall of Fame batter is 300 plus hitter.
Yeah,
it's 30+%.
Yeah,
you don't need to win every time. You don't need to. You're not always going to make the right decision.
Yeah,
but I think that when you start looking at choices, if you start to go down the wrong path, don't double down on the wrong path.
Yeah.
I don't say humble enough, but also be agile enough to really say, okay, this isn't working, I'm going to go here. Learn from the mistake and move on. Don't dwell on a failure. Don't dwell on the past. If you could hit 300, if you could get 30% right, you're going to win.
Yeah.
And that's the long term. So just persevere, keep moving, and don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try new things, because for every 10 things you get wrong, you're going to get one thing really right.
Yeah, I could attest to that. Yeah. For the social media side, I know you're not the biggest social guy, but if someone watches this, they wanted to reach out or get a hold of you, what would be the best way to contact Brian Tepfer?
Oh, that's a great question. Email, and I do look online. I don't post a lot.
Yeah.
Just not my...
It would be like Instagram, LinkedIn.
Inclination. Oh, LinkedIn, Instagram. I've had actually some big partners. One of who's become a friend of mine randomly messaged me on LinkedIn. Okay. This guy, Aaron Van Kampen. Okay. And he literally, I saw it and I was like, oh, I'm going to talk to this guy. And he's a great guy. He makes some great content that we've been sharing with. Okay. And he's really innovative in what he does for going to people's houses and asking the right questions. So yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram is always a great way.
Yeah, I'll make sure the team links in your LinkedIn,
Perfect.
Your Instagram. Someone wants to get a hold of you, I'll make sure it's in the description.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on.
Of course.
To the Real SaaS Podcast. And until next time, let's get it.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. Please make sure to subscribe on your favorite service to get notified every time a new episode is released.